Muy buenas tardes, siendo las 15:58 de la tarde, les saluda Cristian Cristóful, coordinador de lengua inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas en calidad de moderador. Se da inicio a la defensa virtual de Tesina, acorde a la resolución número 0729/2024, que fija fecha y hora de la Tesina con el título Rhetorical Analysis of COVID-19, Social Media Fake News, An Aristotelian Approach, a cargo de la autora María Cielo Caballero Reyes, de la carrera de lengua inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas. El día de hoy, viernes 21 de junio del 2024, dando la bienvenida al invierno paraguayo. En calidad de presidente del Tribunal Examinador, nos acompaña la doctora Valentina Canese. Muy buenas tardes, profesora.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon.
Y en calidad de miembros del Tribunal Examinador, los profesores Cintia Rolón y Ángel Aquino. Muy buenas tardes, profesores.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Buenas tardes a todos. Éxito, Cielo.
Cielo, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Muy bien. Profesora Canese, entonces usted queda con el manejo del desarrollo de la defensa.
Okay, Cielo, you have 30 minutes to present your project to us, and then we will have time for question and answers.
Okay. So I can show my presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Let me see. All right. You can see it well there?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So my theme is rhetorical analysis on COVID-19 social media fake news, an Aristotelian approach. First, I will start with a brief introduction of the themes that we are going to talk about, starting with social media. Social media has become the perfect environment for fake news to thrive, characterized by the accessibility and fast-paced exchange of information, which can result in a significant social problem. As such can be seen in the case of the pandemic COVID-19, which originated a lot of fake news circulating in social media. In this context, rhetoric becomes a key tool in order to analyze the persuasion that lies behind the crafting of these fake news. Statement of the problem. The spread of fake news results in a social problem difficult to address when there is not a clear method to easily determine if a piece of information is false. Carrying out a rhetorical analysis of social media fake news helped develop a mixed method study in which specific rhetoric elements were analyzed to better understand how they are used against the reader's perception. So we pass to the research question. First, we have the general question. How are the modes of persuasion said by Aristotle employed in social media fake news regarding COVID-19 news? And the specific questions. First, which of the modes of persuasion said by Aristotle were mostly used to attempt misinformation regarding COVID-19 in social media? Second, what codes were most utilized? Third, how does rhetoric analysis relate to COVID-19 fake news in current events? And fourth, how does discourse analysis contribute to raising awareness about fake news on social media? The general purpose of this study was to discover how rhetorical elements help explain the persuasive mechanism found in social media fake news related to COVID-19. For this study will analyze written fake news articles regarding COVID-19. The specific objectives of this study was first, to identify the modes of persuasion said by Aristotle and quantify the data collected from COVID-19 fake news articles. Second, to establish a correlation between COVID-19 fake news and rhetorical analysis. Third, based on the data collected, discuss how discourse analysis contributes to raising awareness about fake news in social media. We will start talking about the fake news origin. Fake news origin dates back to 1889, when the term was first mentioned in a magazine and was linked to sensationalism and propaganda. However, with time, the term expanded to include multiple concepts strongly associated with it and referred to other kinds of misleading information. In fact, there is still discussion among the scholars about what the definition of fake news is, but what we know for sure is that it includes lies or inaccuracies to some degree. Whether it is deliberate or not, the author should make sure information is verified before sharing it, so there is a sense of responsibility that the information provider has to have in order to share information with other people. There are some characteristics that we can find in fake news that you could tell apart from real news. First is that they are cheaper to provide than legit information, meaning that some of the information in fake news are not accurately backed up by statements. Second is that consumers cannot easily infer accuracy. Oftentimes, the information shared is very ambiguous. Third is that fake news stories are constructed with the goal of drawing attention. They employ persuasive language in order to convince the audience and oftentimes show a fantastical or critical scenario. And last, there is a background assumption or conception about a subject that is later confirmed or correct. Fake news make use of the bias that people may have regarding some themes and reinforce the idea behind them. According to a research carried out in the United States, 62% of adults reported getting news on social media, and a great number of people recognize that they believe fake news when they see it. As well, another research reported that students struggle to effectively evaluate online claims, source, and evidence. Meanwhile, people over 65 years of age were 7 times more likely to share fake news than those aged between 18 and 29. This shows that fake news affects all kinds of people and raises the question as to how people would verify online information. The impact of fake news and misinformation can be observable in how it translates into social behavior and values. This can be seen, for instance, in the misinformation regarding vaccination, in which there is an active campaign of anti-vaccination. This started also with COVID-19. And one of the statements behind this social behavior was that there was a study that correlated vaccination with autism, or that vaccines would insert you a chip inside you to control you, those kind of themes. So susceptibility can be influenced by several variables, whether linguistic or social, which could eventually lead to a major role in global crisis. Since the first appearance of COVID-19 in 2019, it has impacted all aspects of society and enabled the creation and spreading of fake news and misinformation, ever after which a series of myths surrounding the topic has been produced and gained more attention with time. Some of these myths include the origin of the disease, the forms of contagion and prevention, and even leading to conspiracy theories. So in this context, social media and internet becomes a primary source of information for people to stay updated. Discourse analysis is the analysis of language in use and is not only concerned with the study of formal language properties, but also the cultural and social context in which it is developed. It constitutes a useful framework for research concerning specific social events, the language and its interpretation in a social context. And of course, we can talk about discourse analysis without mentioning rhetoric, which is the art of speaking or writing effectively through persuasion. The origin of rhetoric dates back to ancient Greece in Athens. There was a wave of social change in the citizens in which the privilege that were only destined to some families to gain political power was not passed to the common citizen. So the demand for an eloquent and charismatic speaker was very high, and citizens started to study rhetoric in order to gain the favor of the public.
Okay.
First, we have the first mode of persuasion we have is logos, that appeals to the rational thinking and logical mind of the audience by presenting factual statements. As we can see exemplified in this statement, a study from Harvard University found that regular physical activity can reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by up to 58%. Second, we have pathos, that refers to appealing feelings and evoking emotions. In this example, imagine the joy of a homeless puppy finding a loving family.
Mm.
Your donation to the local animal shelter can give these innocent animals a second chance at life,
Sí.
help make a difference in their lives. And third and last, we have ethos, or to better understand how companies present themselves regarding sustainability. So we can see that rhetorical analysis is a very flexible concept that we can apply to several kinds of research and focus. And talking about adaptability, we find here the work of researcher Rana Takini, who, based on the modes of persuasion said Aristotle, developed this table and attributed to each of the modes of persuasion certain specific codes in order to better determine information. First, we have the codes attributed to ethos. There are expertise, goodwill, trustworthiness. And to logos is descriptive, and to pathos is core pathos, description or imagination, humor, irony, and items. So we pass to the methodology. This study follows a discourse analytical approach, specifically following the rhetorical analysis approach proposed by Rana Takini that we saw previously. The researcher chose this methodology due to the combined qualitative and quantitative elements, which will assess the different modes of persuasion and its sub-levels present in the body of data, as well as the quantity. But for this study, we will focus especially on the qualitative elements present in order to unveil the persuasion behind the messages that authors have here. Sampling and data collection. To collect the main source of data, the researcher used articles retrieved from the site factcheck.org, and the articles must be from social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The themes these articles featured must discuss either of these topics: COVID-19 vaccine, self-medication, COVID-19 health effects and fatality, anti-COVID spreading measures, and data manipulation. The time span in which this article must be retrieved goes from January 2020 to July 2021, which is a considerable amount of time for the development of fake news regarding COVID-19. The data analysis, the study followed a mixed method technique. The selected articles were analyzed and described by applying a rhetorical approach to determine how specific appeals and sub-appeals are present in misinformation. And this data was classified and encoded according to the Aristotle mode of persuasion, following the model used by Rana Takini, and encoded through the software tool named QDA MinerLite. The collected data was processed to present the result statistically. Finally, the modes of persuasion found as well as the codes used are described in detail. Based on this study and considering the results, the researcher formulated an hypothesis to explain the discourse employed in these articles, alongside the most used modes of persuasion and the significance of this framework in conducting studies of this nature. The analytical categories employed for this study included the main modes of persuasion as well as the codes stated by Rana Takini for each of the modes of persuasion. So we'll pass to the results of the study. First, we have this table that shows the themes and the quantity of quotation attributed to them. And we can see that the most discussed theme was COVID-19 health effects and fatality, with a total of 5 quotations and accounting for 27.8 of the total. In the second table, we can see the frequency used of the labels, which will be the modes of persuasion, and the sub-labels stated by Rana Takini. And here we find that logos was the most used mode of persuasion, and logos descriptive was the most used sub-label, with a total of 12 quotations attributed to it and accounting for 23.5% of the total. And the least used sub-appeal was pathos item, items with only one quotation attributed to it. So we will pass to a deeper analysis of the statements that we retrieve from the articles. Here we will talk about ethos expertise. Through this sublevel, the authors show credibility and experience on the theme, making use of the bias that people may have regarding certain themes. For instance, in example VNC, it mentions Taiwan experts, Japanese doctors. So if people have certain bias for these countries, Taiwan and Japan, which are usually known for the contribution to education and health. So the author makes use of that in order to appear credible. And they usually address a third person who is an expert, which we can see in these strict examples. The author is talking about someone else. Next, we have ethos with will. In these examples, the authors rectify previous knowledge that the reader may have and make use of the pronoun we to suggest unity between the author and the reader, like they are on the same side of the situation about victims and versus oppressors, in which the victims are the citizens and the oppressors are the government and their impositions onto them. Next, we have ethos trustworthiness. And in this statement, the author shows sincerity and genuine concern,
please bring my
supposed genuine concern, and in hopes to establish a connection with the reader. These examples you could read as
Thank you.
something someone close to you would tell you, like a family member or a friend. Next, we have logos descriptive. This appeal was characterized by tackling the theme of fast and easy guides to prevent COVID symptoms. They offer a logical sequence of actions which will lead to an oversimplification of the problem. Next, we have pathos, correct pathos. In these examples, the authors show eloquent and eye-catching words in order to catch the attention of the readers by exploring their emotions, usually frustration or anger. Next, we have pathos imagination, and this was one of the less used sub-appeals, and it oftentimes show negative connotations towards the reader. Maybe that's why they are not so popular, because it criticizes the reader to a certain degree, so maybe it's a little bit too shocking for them, but still very effective to convey a certain message through the use of figures. Next, we have pathos humor irony. This example showed a cause and effect action, and the author also employs a little bit of humor in order to lessen the message and the harshness to the reader. And lastly, we have pathos items. This is a more restricted sub-appeal in comparison to the previous ones, but through the sub-appeal, the author can influence the tone and the message behind the statements. So as we could see before, the most used sub-appeal was logos descriptive. It mostly showed a lack of evidence-based information. Sometimes these articles, showed a source that could not be checked by the readers, at least not easily. And they also show statistic and factual information in order to appeal to the credibility. And also the uncertainty through the use of the words basically and usually, which denotes a lack of responsibility from the author in order to confirm information, meaning that what they are saying is very uncertain and may not be true. However, they appeal to the readers that they should believe what they are saying just because. And this sub-appeal also showed mostly easy guides to self-treatment and diagnosis of COVID-19 as one of the themes that was most used. So to the conclusion, this research aimed to understand how the three rhetorical appeals said by Aristotle worked as a base to comprehend the phenomena of COVID-19 fake news in social media. We are going to answer some of the research questions we proposed at the start of this presentation. The first is which of the modes of persuasion, said Aristotle, was mostly used to attempt misinformation regarding COVID-19 in social media? And the second question, what codes were most utilized? So logos was the most used appeal or the three main modes of persuasion, followed closely by pathos and ethos. And the most used of appeal was logos descriptive. This appeal was mostly used to support the author's stance regarding COVID prevention and dissemination, virus propagation, and data manipulation. And one of the second most used sub appeals were ethos, expertise, and core pathos. The third question, how does rhetoric analysis relate to COVID-19 fake news in current events? Rhetoric analysis offers a helpful framework for understanding the careful mechanics of false information by revealing its relationship with persuasion, and thus it uncovers the manipulative strategies set by the authors in order to persuade the audience to believe them. And last question, how does discourse analysis contribute to raising awareness about fake news on social media? Discourse analysis plays an essential role in raising awareness about fake news on social media through the comprehensive understanding of the linguistic, social, and cultural dimensions in the construction and dissemination of misinformation, and also to empower readers into discerning what is true from what is not, developing the critical thinking in order to better analyze information that they consume through social media and the internet. So lastly, some of the recommendations that we make based on this study is to explore a comparative model focusing on similarities and differences between fake news and real news, because both of them employ discourse analysis and rhetoric in order to persuade the audience, but in slightly different ways. And another recommendation was to study how information is interpreted by the audience, which was not covered this time in this study, and the inclusion of more teams will also be ideal. So that is all for the presentation. Thank you very much for being here and listening to my study.
Thank you, Cielo. So now we will give way to the questions. First, I would like to ask Mr. Lon to direct some of our questions at you, please.
Thank you very much, Professor. So after observing your specific topic and listening to all the explanation, what do you think about, or what do you think is going to happen now that with the advancement of AI and machine learning? How do you see that these technologies could be used to identify and perhaps even lower the spread of fake news on social media if something like this happens again during our life?
Um, Actually, I think with AI, it will make the situation worse because you are not only not able to tell apart what is real from what is fake, but this also applies to text and images. So, in fact, AI played a major role in the dissemination of fake news regarding COVID-19. There were a lot of manufactured information which was not real, but people believed it because it looked real. So, in this case, for instance, I think the AI actually, I'm not sure if it would be very helpful, at least as it is now. Maybe perhaps with more developments, it could help you to actually tell apart what is real from what is not real.
Yes, exactly. With the advancement, it's going to continue learning, and
Yes.
it will be able to
I
say.
think that at some point it could be helpful for the reader or the average person.
Thank you very much, Cielo.
Sorry, Mr. Aquino.
Thank you, Cielo. Thank you, Dr. Canese. Cielo, I was going to ask you pretty much the same question, but I switched my question to another one, and this has to do about you, Cielo. Out of those three modes of persuasion, which one would you use to invite students from the ISL to finish their research paper within 1 year, and why?
That's a very specific question. I would use logos and petos. I think those two were the most used one, for good reasons, because of course people are very sensible to logic. When you present them a logical thing, they don't have any chance of thinking other things. Um, Pathos, because emotion is a primary human characteristic, let's say. So appealing to their emotions would actually make them want to, for instance, the feeling after you finish your career. You could go from that part to convince them to finish their paper. They will be free and can achieve their dreams and stuff like that. So I think that would be very successful.
Thank you very much, Cielo.
Okay, so they already asked a couple of things that were very interesting. Now, in regards to, in connection to what Ms. Rolon asked, how do you think these strategies could help people in general and students of language in particular to be able to um, or these rhetorical analysis strategies to understand and to detect maybe false information from real information, and maybe use to detect maybe AI generated text from, let's say, text that has been um, produced by a human.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I kept in mind when I was developing this study, is that I wanted that people who read it, like the average reader, will gain some knowledge that they can apply to their daily routines. So I think that the modes of persuasion in this case are very helpful, because you learn about this concept, and before, when you are consuming information, you stop and start thinking, okay, maybe this person is trying to use one of these appeals in order to look credible and to gain your trust. So people would already have that knowledge and apply it, and of course learn with the process. I think there's also a pattern that all fake news share, which can be unveiled with the use of modes of persuasion.
And related to that,
Mhm.
how do you think this approach um, would be? Do you think this teaching this approach to ISL students would be useful for them as language um, future language professionals, and why?
Yes, because as they are students for an ISL, they have to be formed and have this knowledge that they could share to other people as well. Because it is very important to be sure that what you are reading and what you are spreading is real and not fake. In order to well, be more conscious of what you are doing. So I think this is a skill that all students should have and should be critical about.
Well, thank you, Cielo. And one last thing, how would you incorporate this into, in what part of the curriculum would you incorporate this unit or this knowledge?
I think it could be inside linguistics because it's a part of discourse analysis. So in the branch of maybe pragmatics, I think it will be ideal to place um, this study on techniques.
Or maybe in oral communication?
That could be as well because of the rhetoric. Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Cielo. Now we're going to ask you to leave the room for a few minutes. We're going to discuss and then call you back in a few minutes to give you your feedback.
Okay. Thank you. Hello again.
Hello, Cielo. How are you? Well,
Fine.
after deliberating and after your defense, first of all, we would like to congratulate you. We can now call you a colleague. Congratulations, you passed your defense and your thesis. Good
Thank you.
job. We're
Congratulations.
happy and pleased to call you now a licenciada. So now you can request your your transcript at the ISL, and also start the paperwork for the diploma.
Okay, thank you very much.
And now,
Congratulations,
now we can take
licenciada.
another, yeah, now we can take another picture that you're smiling. Okay, so
Okay.
everybody, look, yeah, now it's different. See, now she smiles. Uh, I don't know if Professor Rolon, Christoffel would like to tell her anything else, or Mr. Christoffel, if you would like to maybe close the
Right,
recording and then. Um,
right. I'll do that. Con esto damos por terminada la defensa de tesis de Cielo Caballero, deseándole felicidades, estamos felices con ella y eso es todo.